I am Joshua K. Sabra, Esquire, and he is Dr. Miles Salisbury. And you are listening to the Miles Ahead podcast, where we share tactics, techniques, and protocol to improve your physical, mental, and spiritual health while you walk the path of the warrior. Stay tuned. Today on the Miles Ahead podcast, we're covering the litany of little t and big T traumas that go undiagnosed and are fed into a medical system that focuses on symptom-based treatment, which contributes to the disorganized development of our selves and our personalities, and ultimately creates a crisis of hope and a crisis of purpose that's palatable inside American culture. Stay tuned. And so that's the first time I realized that I was somewhat attracted to men. Anyways, what were you saying?
All ears just perked up. I didn't know this podcast was about that. That's something I should know about you.
Oh, there's a lot. You should know a lot about me by now, but I'm excited to get into the second half of mental health and would probably be part 2 of a 47-part self-therapy session for me. How are you doing today, Miles? What are you listening to?
A lot of Jocko podcasts recently. For music, White Buffalo, Wish It Were True, good song. And then a lot of Jocko catching up. I have like 3 or 4 podcasts that I listen to that I make sure I'm current on, and then I go off and explore other ones. So now I'm catching up, like 3 behind. So looks like you're listening to Alan Watts.
Yeah. You know, following the trend of you quoting podcasts on here, I just searched. Spotify has literally everything under the sun. So I found an Alan Watts channel, and he sounds a little bit like Obi-Wan Kenobi from the first Star Wars, the original, Sir Alec Guinness.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a British accent, and he's got like a smile on his face. You could tell he's like giddy about, you know, or very lighthearted about what he's sharing. And he has, you know, some fun stories and jokes throughout his course, and then he makes himself laugh for like, you know, a full minute, where he'll tell a Zen story, and then it'll be some sort of meaningless koan with a joke kind of attached to it, and then he'll laugh at it for like a minute. So it's really soothing.
A Zen koan.
Koan, is that how you pronounce it?
Technically.
Yeah.
Grammar Nazi again.
Koan. Yeah. So Alan Watts, if you haven't, we'll plug it into my current favorite episode. Give it a listen. It'll zen you out for sure.
It's always good.
So
this is part B to our last episode.
So we're picking up the conversation where we left off, because in episode 1 of the mental health epidemic, you enlightened me in quite a few like nuances of how doctors engage with their client patients, and like students, clients, patients.
The worst one out there.
They're victims.
Consumers. I've heard that before. Ugh.
I think it's really, I don't know if I'm there yet, but because medicine is it's becoming evident medicine is a failed institution, as rated by its consumers, the consumption of medicine.
You mean the medical system as a whole? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, in the U.S. and some other Western.
It's not the practices; it's the system.
An individual practice, you know, results may vary, of course, but whether it's, and Canada's going this way as well. They're infected by a lot of our same processes, but as the costs increase, the ROI decreases, meaning we're getting less for more, and it's being exacerbated the longer that the system continues in this direction. And the system is continuing in this direction at a greater velocity for a variety of economic and cultural reasons. But some of those you revealed, where, you know, getting compensated. A part of how you get compensated for a conversation with a patient is related to its diagnosis, the diagnosis that you give them. Once you give them a diagnosis, properly evaluated, properly assessed or not, it's very difficult to undiagnose them,
to get it off your chart,
to change a misdiagnosis. So that leads to symptom-based treatment, because it's easy to quantify symptoms. It's much more time intensive and difficult to quantify causes.
Mm-hmm.
And, or here's where I'll sound very fancy, define the etiology of a disease.
It's true. That's why I never give someone a diagnosis in the first session. How am I, unless it's like really obvious or they come in with it, like how are you supposed to figure that out in a 50-minute session? And you go to like a PCP and they see you for like 4 minutes, and then you have X, and like, I hope you're right. Like, how did you really get there that fast? But they have no time. They have to give you a diagnosis in order to get billed to bill. It's a problem.
The military, I don't know how it is today, but 20 years ago in the Army, they will narrate their process for you. Like, we're not going to diagnose. We're going to just treat for the lowest common denominator.
Oh, the other side of it. Yeah.
So we're just going to treat you for things that we have no idea. It's probably likely X. So you're probably dehydrated. So we're going to go ahead and treat you for dehydration. Then Y, Z, and then they'll go through it. And only after a year or two of your pathological pain will we, actually send you to a specialist and formally diagnose it. But they will narrate that for you, which is nice on one end, where they're like, listen, we're not going to invest a lot of time and money in this because we'd rather have you out in the field doing your thing, which is totally it. The side effect of that is, outside of some unnecessary deaths and injuries, but the positive side effect of it is you start to realize that you can get to the objective despite some, a pinched nerve. You can get to the objective despite discomfort. And as a 19-year-old male, it's nice to have some built-in resilience for yourself.
The downside of that is, I just saw something recently about a Navy SEAL who was complaining about stomach pain for a long time. And they kept giving like Pepto-Bismol and shit. And he was deployed, and like they pushed it off. And finally he got a colonoscopy, and he's like, oh, you have a stage 4 colon cancer. And he died. And then his family's like losing the house and stuff. It was just a horrific ordeal. Like, you couldn't just, I think he kept asking, like, bro, my stomach hurts. It hurts. And the medicine wasn't doing anything. And then he didn't get looked at the proper way until it was too late.
And this is, we'll have to do an episode on pain, because a lot of times I think doctors, because of their sample size bias, because they have met so many pain patients who do not have pathology, they think that, if somebody has a physiological issue, it'll be more painful than the people that just have pain with no pathology or, a physiological attribution to it. Mm-hmm. And that's not true at all. In fact, if you look and you look in PubMed, there is no association of pain with a crushed disc or a crushed, these are intervertebral discs that allow the spine to move and protect the nerve canal. When they get crushed or they get smashed or displaced, there's no actual documentation of pain as a result of that condition anywhere in the literature officially. Now, I know Miles is like crossing his eyes.
I want to see that study.
The funny part is doctors who are all evidence-based, they will talk about when they get the MRI or the X-ray that shows the crushed disc, they're like, oh, this is why your back's hurting. Because they just want to say something that the patient will connect with and give them a sense of peace, and that their situation is understood. And that's understandable, but that's actually not how pain works. This is all completely off topic. We don't need to get into this.
Can you get me a mental health crisis?
Yeah, exactly. But because of this disconnect between pathology and pain, doctors oftentimes, they're oftentimes undertreating pathology and overtreating non-pathological pain. The more you know. Do, 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 do.
Well, I just think about that Navy SEAL example of all the people that is complaining about pain. You probably should listen to them because they never complain about pain, those guys. So just interesting and sad.
Yeah, it is very sad. And this is also why we were talking about this before the episode began. Being tough is actually not necessarily something that helps you in your healing journey. In fact, being tough might be the thing that kills you.
There's a place for it, but that's not the only tool.
What would be the place for it?
So someone like me, so like most guys, I'm going to use a generalization. Most guys, they'll go for that move first, like tough it out. And like, that's the first move we go to. And it's like, they'll do that and they'll plow through stuff and forget to feel. Well, someone more like me who comes more in the yin side of things, is more melancholic and depressive. I actually fucking need that hammer. I don't even have it. I can't slam shit. You know, I've got other tools that I'm already in the shit. Like I need to get out of the emotion a little bit and like move forward. So I do need to toughen up at some points, but it's not the only move. So it's for some people, yeah, absolutely can get in their way if that you think that you just have to suck it up and forget about everything else. That's not going to work. But there is a place for that. It's just not the only tool.
So, do you think would you consider yourself somebody that is hard on themselves?
Yeah, in certain contexts, yeah.
Okay. I think most people would fall into that, and I think most people believe that about you. You talked about being tough.
Like mentally tough is what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Or resilient.
Yes. Your boy Jocko, our boy Jocko, talks about the solution to anxiety is action, right?
One option, yeah. It's a good one.
So, it's an act of it's a tiny. It's going to sound like we're splitting hairs here, but it's a slightly different approach to the mental toughness thing you're talking about. So, it's very common in the sales space, specifically the fitness industry, very specifically the fitness industry, to have call reluctance, to want to avoid reaching out to potential clients, right?
Oh, yeah.
So when you're faced with call reluctance and you're afraid of dialing, there's a couple of things going on. There's there's the practitioner's discomfort with uncertainty, right? And feeling like they're annoying, the person that they're talking to, which is, they probably will be annoyed because they're, grocery shopping and you're calling them. However, the act of compassion versus mental toughness is, if I'm feeling anxious about that action, then I go back to look at the results that I'm bringing into their lives, right? Most people don't have anybody at all that cares about them enough to ask them to show up for themselves.
Correct.
So I could be the only person that they've sent out a question to an email or answered a Facebook, quiz, or they've typed their info into somewhere. That's how I have it. I could be the only person in their life that cares enough to make them uncomfortable in a positive way, right? Because they're going to get something good out of it if they take action, whatever that action is. Now, the act of compassion with myself, if I'm facing call reluctance, is to reconnect with what the act of service means for that person, how I'm going to change their life for the positive, but also for me. Like, this is my vision and my purpose, and I have an agenda as well, and that matters, right? So it's reconnecting with my vision and mission at the very top end, and then my personal power and self-love and aging, that's self-leadership, is what we're going to talk about today. So the action for me has to come from a place of compassion for the person I'm working with and for myself simultaneously.
And how does it do to the toughness thing we're talking about?
The toughness thing is, so that the affect that I think the mental toughness piece has towards this is Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh yeah.
Do a line of Coke, take a drink of beer, and then make your MF and dials. And it doesn't matter if it's good for them or good for you or not.
Just get through.
Just go.
Yeah.
And that override, in my experience, because I've done that, I've overridden my own nervousness by just
Slamming
force of will, and it just creates a lot of friction, emotional friction for me, for the client, for everyone.
Yeah, that's the downside of this switch, and that's not what I was talking about. Damn.
So
you're right; it was splitting hairs.
It is, and so when I hear that, most of the time I hear "drop the hammer, let's freaking go," and there is energy there, and there is good. You can
sometimes you need that. Yeah.
Play some punk rock and
working out. It's great.
Sometimes I set a timer and say I'm gonna reach out to 20 people and see how fast I can do it.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of jump in the faith that the bridge appears, but for me it has to originate from a place of compassion.
I love that. Yeah. Because that'll come through to the person you're talking to as well. You're more likely to connect with them if they feel like you actually give a fuck.
That's right. And it sounds like this sounds like mental jargon, but welcome to the Miles Ahead podcast.
Good God.
but like reconnecting with your why is 9/10 of the animating energy behind any action.
Well said.
So bringing this back to this conversation of, kind of widespread trauma among the populace, big T and little t, that we talked about last time. Big T being physical and mental abuse, neglect, no food in the house, stuff like that. Little t, raised by a single parent, not having a strong male influence, or a mom, or
going hungry.
Yeah, I would call that a big T. Because
or sometimes hungry.
Because if the environment you're in is not safe, then it doesn't really matter. And this is a lot of where our mental health you're 4 or 10 times as likely. I get my stats mixed up, but you're many times more likely to be on antipsychotics if you're below the poverty line.
Really?
So poor kids they're obese. They're over medicated. By poverty line, I think I'm specifically pulling from Medicaid data, and I think you're 10 times as likely on Medicaid. But the reason is because the environment's not safe. Instead of changing the environment that the kid lives in, we are changing the way the kid relates to an unsafe environment. And if you take that much away from this conversation, you can if you can just change your environment to make it safe, and then the people around you, your inner circle, and they're good, and then finally connect with yourself, you can basically improve your mental fitness just by doing those things. But in America, we have the opposite approach. Is we put people into situations where they're not safe and they're not supported, and then we force them into defunct and decrepit institutions that exacerbate the damage. Mm-hmm. And we continue to say, tough it out. Like, these kids just have to sit still, and it's like,
good luck with that.
It's disgusting. Now, listen, I don't know what it's like to grow up in, what's the neighborhood? Dunthorpe or Brentwood.
Go to Riverdale High School.
The richest zip code in the country. I don't know what it's like, but most of the country, 50% of the country is dealing with problems of food scarcity, one parent, sometimes no parents, and there isn't anybody safe at home. So the ADHD, oppositional defiance disorder, of course they hate their fucking parents, and they hate the
teachers,
authority, and everyone around them, because everyone is telling them to not watch their eyes and listen to their own hearts, which is telling them that this is wrong.
I'm not safe and no one sees me. Please fucking help. No, listen to the fucking history lesson and sit still. No, that's not going to work.
So we've got this epidemic of big T and little t traumas that Americans are going through. And because we never figured that part out, we just slap a diagnosis on them that's convenient for the insurance company and the drug company. And we're off to the races.
We are.
underneath that, though, those things are those events are our genetic predisposition to the world, right? Our personality traits, our big five personality traits, and how those traits are engaged with in the environment, in out and about in the world, basically make up our personality.
Do you want to go over the big five again? I knew we did it last time, but maybe we could refresh.
The big five are openness, so willingness to learn new things, experience new things. Conscientiousness, which is essentially the level of internal motivation and drive that you have to...
You're getting after itness.
Solve problems, problem-solving ability or desire. Extroversion, so on a spectrum, how much of your energy do you derive from other people? How much of it derives from yourself and one-on-one conversations and safe relationships in your life? So the more introverted you are, that you recharge your batteries in your downtime. The more extroverted, that you charge your batteries for being around people. The agreeableness. So this is, again, on a spectrum, how likely or how much of your self do you contribute to making other people feel comfortable and feeling seen and heard and connected with? How much do you feel comfortable putting, with boundaries, putting pressure on people, saying no, disagreeing, being heard?
Or go along to get along the other way.
Yeah. And the neuroticism, this is a measure of I call it the locus of control. Is it more, what percentage of your behavior and your energy do you feel in control of and responsible for, and what percentage is outside of your control from your perception?
Mm-hmm. It takes a bad rep too, the neuroticism. It doesn't mean it's bad. There are some bad parts of it for sure, but like being melancholic, for example, like very sensitive, a lot of artists, a lot of deep thinkers, but they have some side effects of that same thing. The word neurotic has been sort of thrown around and kind of beat down a little bit. It's kind of I don't know if I like it a lot for the big five, but I know what it means, but I don't think the general populace really knows what it means.
Yeah. So
we're all neurotic. Let's just get that straight.
That's right. And it's just a spectrum. These are spectrums.
Exactly.
So our experiences in our life interact with our personality. So if you're and this is why I become a little bit more spiritual in this conversation, because when you connect the dots in ways, you can see how your personality plays into your confrontations, your story, your trauma or your lack thereof, or your positive experiences in your life. Is there a counter word for trauma, like on the other end, like a win?
Non-suffering.
No, we don't even have. Yeah,
it's funny. I think of Buddhism, and they always talk about how the first noble truth is life involves suffering, and today we have it. More or less, we're talking about some heavy stuff here, but on balance compared to the way things used to be, like we don't have to worry about as much as we used to. We can generally eat and not be enslaved and blah, blah, blah. So with all our creature comforts, when we experience adversity, we think something is seriously wrong with our lives. Something's going bad. We need to fix it. It's like, actually, if things are going wrong, that's kind of normal. And then to enjoy it when it's good, because that doesn't last very long. Life involves suffering. It's going to happen over and over and over and over. But we think the opposite is supposed to happen. It's always supposed to be Skittles and rainbows. And if I hurt, then, oh shit, catastrophe, So it gets skewed a little bit.
Well, and expectations and cultural norms play a lot into what we label as trauma. So this is an example I saw from Alex Ramosi, who is not a life coach, but he said he's sort of
by proxy.
Yeah, by proxy, a life coach. He was like 100 years ago. So he's like, if a 14-year-old girl has sex with a 50-year-old man, we would all agree, whoa, that's a crime.
Today.
100 years ago, that was the norm. You would be, as soon as you got of childbearing age, you'd be married away to somebody.
Dowries and shit.
And that was the expectation.
Mm-hmm. Game of Thrones.
And a lot of to the process of like what is trauma, feeling helpless and hopeless and out of control of circumstances, but understanding and predicting what's going to happen to you is part of how we get control of it. So if someone were to say, hey, I'm going to throw you out of a plane into a minefield, and in that minefield, you're going to experience the loss of your left leg, but you had a year to prepare for it, you might not be as traumatized by that.
Right. Yeah. You expected it. You worked that through in your head. You know what to do. You have a contingency plan.
You got to grieve the loss of your, and in a way, I mean, that's what military training is trying to do, is they start shooting at you early on and allowing you to communicate and make decisions in those environments so that when the time comes, it's not all of a sudden and it's not your first rodeo.
Stress inoculation.
So, yeah. And it's very practical. And our, but in the United States, my perception and my experience is that our development gets impacted by all of these non-systemic, well, I guess they are becoming systemic, but in unpredictable ways, these non-systemic, unplanned hardships that we are often confronting alone because there's just not a roadmap for there's no roadmap for life, but I think a lot of people, their expectations, and I see this real time online, their expectations are getting shattered when they go and have experiences with, their partner, the first time they get married, they think it's going to be one thing. It's definitely not. Starting a business is a classic one. Alex Hormozy has an experience of getting completely robbed by a business partner. He had many good and many bad business partnerships, but in one where he ignored all the red flags, which were many, he got completely robbed by a guy. And he's like, he said, this was the quote unquote traumatic experience, which meaning he was very shocked to experience it. But without support and connection in your environment and skills and a process, we don't have any way of integrating these experiences into our psyche and into our life. And to quote Bessel from The Body Keeps the Score, we have physiological changes in our nervous system from it. And over time, those gaps widen and our function degrades over time. And if we don't go back and heal these wounds, which we're not set up to in our society to, to quote DMX, you keep putting things out of your mind when they come up, problems. You just keep ignoring things, and pretty soon you run out of space up there.
Mm-hmm. The suppression, pushing it into the shadows, it gets stronger, and then comes back in weird ways.
Yep. DMX was a lifelong drug addict, or struggled with addiction. I don't know if he identified as an addict, but he struggled with addiction. He was in and out of rehab, but he grew up in an orphanage, and I think he had a bunch of issues that he never quite wrapped his head around or his heart around.
Mm.
And it caught up with him, and it continued to catch up with him until he relapsed one more time, or one time too many. Dead in his 50s.
Sad. Happens quite a bit, actually.
It happens. I mean, we see it in our community. One of our
fentanyl crisis right now.
Well, there's a gentleman that is well known in the gym that took his own life very recently.
I did not know this.
Yeah, I don't have all the facts. I'll get the body of water, but wrong. But he drowned himself.
Oh my God.
And we'll never know, because these stories aren't the stories that we talk about all the time. But like, we'll never know the contributing factors. Like, you know, I'm certain there's stuff going on with him, but
Sure.
I'm still learning. I have members of my family who've been struggling with mental health for years, and I'm only learning parts of the story now. And that's just another reminder of, you don't really know anyone. You know, you might have 5 or 6 people in your inner deep circle, and you have like 83% of their story.
If that.
If yeah, you've got the marketing version.
You got to get real close. You got the marketing version. Yeah. You got the representative. That's why it's good to have real close friendships, though, over time in relationships. Even in your current relationships, you still start peeling back some onions through conflict and repair that you didn't know about your person, that they finally tell you, or tell you in a different way that you weren't aware of.
That's right. So this falling down the stairs process of coming from the factory with a personality, the environment shaping that personality in negative and positive ways, but that physiological trauma that creates, you know, the roots of the growth that turn into these dysfunctional branches. And the branches are what we medicate, because we don't like our short temper or
depression,
oppositional defiance disorder, ADD, whatever it is,
anxiety.
So we start to medicate those things. And even if you do it all correctly, there is side effects.
Always. Unfortunately.
And I don't know if we have time today to get into it, but this leads into a crisis of hope. And I wrote on the board a crisis of purpose, but embedded in that the crisis of purpose is part of the hope.
I think so. If you don't have the hope, how can you get to the purpose, right? Or maybe you get to the purpose and it takes the hope part. Maybe they're intertwined.
I think they're intertwined, because part of the clinical definition of hope is a goal or a vision. So
what, in the coaching world, or what?
That's Brene Brown. Okay. Hope is goal, pathway, agency.
According to her.
According to
you told me this.
Some researcher.
Yeah. That's right. There was a psychologist that was doing research on this. Yeah.
So I think we should cut that. We did dissect that and break those down into pieces for another episode, because
that'd be a great podcast. Yeah.
Yes, because that
is what leads to this mental health crisis. In a big part is lack of hope and lack of purpose and meaning and vision. Like, what's the point? Why are we here? This sucks. I have zero upper mobility. I can't get out of my spots. I have no options. All these other people do. They don't want to share, or whatever it is. You know, the world's upside down. Fuck, you could watch the debate recently. And you're like, this is it. Every year is like, it can't get worse than this, and it does. Like, no wonder people want to give up, right?
Yeah. And the experience of this is different for all kinds of different people for different reasons.
Of course.
But I give you an easy one. This one is a not uncommon one, unfortunately. In the Diary of a CEO, Stephen is talking about a divorce that his friend is going through. And they're 2 entrepreneurs, and they've been married for 13 years. And they're both really passionate and, high conscientiousness, very similar personalities. And he was talking with his friend about it, and he said, his report was, I don't know what happened, man. It's like somewhere along the way, our relationship vanished, and neither of us noticed that. We didn't know who the other person was. We didn't know why they were doing what they were doing. And we didn't, have these common touch points. We didn't sync up. Yeah. And we didn't notice that we weren't syncing up until we were so far down the road. Mm-hmm. And to Miles's point about you don't know anyone fully, every night my girlfriend and I go through this questionnaire. She was gifted this book of questions, and we talk about these things.
That's great.
And we have these like deep, sometimes superficial and sometimes deep conversations. But what we're doing is we're peeling the onion, and the onion is infinite.
Yeah.
And
It's intended to be.
And that's the beauty of it. And I like ritual to help me sleep. And I also, feeling connected to my partner is part of how I feel safe in a relationship.
For sure.
And it's also a practice for me because, like many men or just many fucking people, if I'm not prompted in an oblique way, I won't share anything valuable. It's like I'll be in a status report mode.
Yeah. I think for guys, we're kind of trained that way.
Yeah, unfortunately. And this is where, like, you know, relationships evaporate and friendships evaporate, and what I've observed is you're building something that neither of you even know why you're doing it, right? Like, I don't want to live here. I don't want to do this. I don't want to, this is who I was 7 years ago, but I haven't been that person in a long time. And what I tried to do for myself and I try to do for my partner is make it safe for them to change their mind
I like that.
about things.
Options. Yeah.
Like, just because you're a red wine person now doesn't mean you need to be a red wine or even a wine person at all. You have the freedom to, and that's uncomfortable because when my girlfriend got home from her race yesterday, I had a Domino's pizza waiting for her and a bottle of wine because I know she likes those things.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there'll be a day when maybe she doesn't like those things, or she doesn't like them all the time. Of course, she doesn't like them all the time because that's a lot.
That's not going to work. Yeah.
But I knew that would be something that she would want. And I think it scares us to then not know what our partner might want, what the next version of them, what a treat would be to them.
That's a good point. Yeah. We want them to be static so we know what they're like so we can feel safe because they're not changing. So we don't have to change and we're all good. But then that's the frog in the boiling water analogy. Slowly turn that heat up.
Well, and then you're if you're never vulnerable, then you always think you have to pretend to be around another person.
Then you're inauthentic and you're gonna resent yourself.
Yeah, and you're not. And you're happy, and no one should live like that. Mm-mm. So, this mental health episode, setting up this conversation for hope, is really to just identify the problems, not to depress you, but to impress upon you the importance of knowing what is going on with you. And I've been working on it concertedly for 3 years, and I'm learning that I have no idea.
And how many times in the spiritual world have I heard masters say the same thing? I'm just scratching the surface. I'm like, you? Yes. Yeah. If you know it all, if someone says they know it all, fucking run, because that's a crazy person. that's a narcissist, true narcissist. Well,
that's when I didn't do the work. There's a product called, or a program called, The Work by Byron Katie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that book. Yeah,
and this is where I'll kind of end my thoughts for today. But she has this worksheet that you print it off and you go, okay, what really annoys you about your neighbors or your community or people in the world? And so I have my pencil and I'm really intending to go deep into my own psyche. I need to go back and do this, but so I start to write. I go, nothing really annoys me about anyone. And then I set my pencil down and I just take a deep breath and I go, oh no. That's what someone says right before they climb the clock tower and kill everyone.
Yeah, that's some denial right there.
So that was my first like canary in the coal mine, that I was not okay.
Not wanting to look at shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that makes sense. If you're in pain, why do you want to go there?
Well, and if you're always good, if you're always good to go, you got no problems, you have less friction
up front. acutely.
but you might be going in the wrong direction.
Hey,
So you want friction.
That shadow side's building. Yeah, it's counterintuitive, but you do. Well, it's just like strength training, right? Straight up friction.
You must have resistance to grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, next week or next episode, let's kick off this hope investigation.
Hope / purpose meaning.
Yeah, we'll embed purpose in your, because this is the freaking Path of the Warrior podcast. So we will, of course, talk about
make some definition,
vision and purpose. But yeah, we'll get into that because I think that is what we all want. That's the glass of water to a thirsty soul, is hope connected to deeper meaning.
And like you said, when you walked in, it's the hope that kills you. Just coming off an England win today in the Euro 2024, and I was singing that most of the game, but they fucking won. And they're playing Switzerland next, and that's going to be a tough game. And my other team, Germany, is still in. And then in the Copa America, USA is hanging on by a thread. They have to beat Uruguay, and it's not going to happen. So fingers crossed the other two teams. Anyways, yeah. In sports, it is the hope that kills you.
Depends on the team that shows up any given Sunday, right?
Yeah, unless you're just a bandwagoner, and then you always have hope. It's like the guys that are just good to go. I'll just choose a different fucking team. Whoever's winning, man. I hate those guys.
But
you never learn. You never get the absolute highs, and your teams suck forever, and then they win. If you need that friction, right? If you're the good to go guy, you'll never experience that.
Well, I'm a Wrexham fan. I've been following their seasons, and
it's awesome.
It's crazy what they've been able to do. But every game they win makes the next game less likely that they're going to win.
More pressure. Yeah.
Yeah. Now they're in League One, which is they're knocking on the door for the Champions League, but
Championship,
and
then Premier League.
But the narrow gap of what is a good player in League One and what's a good player in Championship, it's just a sliver of speed, of
intelligence,
positioning, IQ, work ethic. Like it's so tiny, the differences between those things. It's like
and luck.
If you're like 1/100th, if your 40-yard dash is 1/100th slower, you're not the starting halfback.
Sometimes it comes down to that. Yeah. Yeah. I hope they do. They're going to have to take on more investors because they have to compete with the cheaters out there, like the Man Cities with the oil money. You're going to have to find an oil person or another, like Arsenal's owned by the Cronkies, who own like 12 teams, and that's how they make their money. But hey, we're one of the only teams that's not massively in debt, right? And plays by the rules. So, check that, other Premier League teams. Anyways, we're turning some of the sports podcast. Probably lost like a third of the listeners.
Hopefully they hung up 30 minutes ago. All right. Until the hope brings you back to life. Josh out.
We are out.